Hello everyone! Next I'll introduce the legal meaning of each attribute of the Position Allocate rule, as well as the specific method for setting up this rule in the ComBoox system. Simply put, the Position Allocate rule has two basic functions. The first is to set up the company's executive positions. The second is to allocate the nomination rights for those executive positions to specific users or to specific job titles. Before we dive into the details, we need to clarify a few key concepts. The first concept: a position is not the same as a job title. For example, a company may have 3 directors, all with the job title director, but each of these 3 individuals may have plenty different role or function within the company. Therefore, they need to have different position numbers. Similarly, a company might have 3 vice general managers, each responsible for a different area. Their job title is all vice general manager, but each person's actual role or position is different. The second concept: what do we mean by nomination, right? Simply put, it means who has the right to propose a candidate for a given position so that the relevant decision-making body can review, discuss, and vote on the candidate. Nomination rights are most concentrated at the shareholder level. Different investors may require a certain number of seats on the board of directors. When we talk about seats on the board in this context, we are essentially referring to how many director nomination rights each investor has. It is important to note that when these directors are finally appointed, they still need to be reviewed, discussed, and voted on by the general meeting of shareholders. The only difference is that certain special investors have the nomination, right? Moreover, this nomination right can be allocated either to a specific user or to a specific job title. For example, we could allocate the nomination right for a certain position to the general manager or allocate the nomination right for the CFO to the CEO. But the question then becomes, which specific user is the CEO? That is not determined in advance. It will only be known after the board selects and appoints a specific person to serve as CEO. Therefore, the holder of a nomination right may be either a specific user or a specific job title. The third key concept is the relationship between positions and users. In daily operations, a specific natural person may hold multiple roles at the same time. That is why, when designing the system, we deliberately decoupled positions from users. In other words, one user can simultaneously hold several positions and have several job titles. For example, a person could be both the chairman and the CEO, while also serving as a director of the company, and possibly even holding other manager roles. This kind of scenario is fully supported by our system design. In the ComBoox system, the company's executive positions are managed by 2 different mapping tables. One is the Register of Directors, and the other is the Register of Managers. These are 2 separate tables. Each is a mapping from a position number to a specific position object. Both mapping tables are stored in the Register of Directors smart contract. The Position Allocate rule can be understood as an instruction to modify these 2 mapping tables, the Register of Directors and the Register of Managers. Through this rule, we can create a new position or delete an existing one. If we state in the shareholders' agreement that we want to create a new position, but that position number already exists, then what actually happens is that the existing position's settings are updated or modified. So in essence, the Position Allocate rule provides a way through the review and voting process of the shareholders' agreement for all shareholders and investors to have a say in setting up, modifying, or deleting the company's various executive positions. Alright. Next, let's switch over to the ComBoox system and take a look at the specific attributes of the Position Allocate rule, as well as the commercial and legal meaning of each attribute. Let's click the Position Allocate rule button to enter this interface. As you can see, this interface is similar to the voting rules interface we covered earlier. If we want to add a new position, we can click the plus button. The system will then add a new button to this panel. Each button represents a position, and its number will be different from any existing position numbers. If we want to remove a position, we click the minus button, and the system will delete it. Now, let's click in and take a look at rule number 256. It's worth noting that Rule 256 is a very special rule. It's the very first rule in the Position Allocate Rules section. Every time a shareholders agreement is activated, the system first reads Rule 256 and looks at its first attribute to find out how many Position Allocate rules are included in this version of the agreement. Once it knows that number, the system will then read that many rules in sequence and, based on their specific content, create or modify the company's executive position information. So, as we just mentioned, the first attribute is called Quantity of Subsidiary Rules. This tells the system how many Position Allocate rules are included in this version of the shareholders agreement within the smaller set of position allocation rules. Whatever that number is, we enter it here. For example, if we want to create 5 new positions, we enter 5 here. The second attribute is called Remove Position. This asks whether you want to delete an existing position. If we choose True, that means we want to delete an existing position. If we choose False, that means we want to add a new position or modify an existing one. Let me elaborate a little. If the position number we entered does not already exist in the system will simply add a new position setup to the relevant mapping table. If that position number already exists in the system, then upon activation, the system will automatically retrieve the existing positions, settings, and update them according to the relevant attributes in our Position Allocate rule. The next attribute is the position number. Let's assume we assign the very first position number to the chairman of the board of directors. The next attribute is the job title attribute. In this field, the system has several default job titles. The first one is shareholder. Although a shareholder is not technically a corporate executive title, we often need to allocate nomination rights to shareholders when nominating directors. So the system includes shareholder as an element in this enumerated list of job titles. The second job title is chairman of the board, followed by vice chairman, managing director, and director. These are all job titles that align with company law. Further down are some job titles for the company's management team, such as CEO, CFO, COO, and CTO. These are all common executive positions. The next attribute is nominator. For example, suppose we allocate the very important position of chairman to the company's de facto controller, user ID F40BE6CCA. What should the job title of the nominator be? Based on our earlier explanation, it should be a shareholder. The next question is, during the review and voting process for this specific position, which decision-making body should review it and which voting rule should apply? Typically, for a director position like this, we apply rule number 9. As we explained earlier when discussing voting rules, Rule 9 is preset by the system specifically for ordinary shareholder resolution matters. The next attribute after that is end date. This is the last day of the term for this position. Let's assume it is September 9th, 2030. Click Update and confirm. So, for this specific position allocation rule, we are done. Now we can see that the background color of this button has changed to a dark shade, indicating that new content has been written to it. It is no longer the system default. As you can see, we have successfully written the update. By the same logic, we can add more positions. For example, let's assign position number 2 to the vice chairman. The nominator is user ID 6C35C56DFD, who is also a shareholder. And rule number 9 applies. The term end date is the same, September 9th, 2030. Alright, we've updated the vice chairman position in the system as well. The information for position number 4 is a bit special. We will designate this position as CEO, the head of the company's management team. We are not giving the nomination right for CEO to any specific user. Instead, we are giving the nomination right to the job title of chairman. That means whoever serves as chairman has the right to nominate the CEO. Also, the applicable voting rule is no longer the shareholder meeting voting rule. Instead, it is the board's simple majority voting rule. The term end date for the CEO is the same as the board's term, September 9th, 2030. We want to emphasize one point. If the nomination right for a particular position is not given to a specific user, then in the nominator field you can either leave it blank or enter 10 zeros. The system will then automatically look for whoever holds the relevant job title. That person will have the nomination right. Conversely, if you enter a specific user ID, the system will direct the nomination right to that specific user. So now we have 4 position allocate rules in place. Alright, that's all for today's introduction. Thank you for your time, and see you in the next video.